And at the time of writing his suggestions in 1844, he had already sold 120, or had 120 successful examples of this policy in Foxhill. So Foxhill was described somewhere, I saw it, I think, in the most recent historical journal, that Foxhill was the only major town outside of Bainstown and Grantstown next to Nassau. Well, we expect to be successful if the people own their own land. Now, some of them lost it afterwards. And by the way, everybody, if there's one thing that I see that can be said today from my research, make a will, please. My research has shown so much land where it wasn't a proper will, or there was a will in one generation and not in the generation afterwards, and that quiet little Titans Act is a total mess, even though it was meant to clear up some of the confusion. And he has set aside 1,200 acres of his land for the program. There are other examples. There was a deed of gift. Lord Rowe, the biggest owner, told his agents and the governor that he wanted all his apprenticeship terminated within 3 months of the emancipation of slavery. So they didn't have to wait for 4 years. They cut the roads, you know, they agitated some stuff other than that, all true. And in one case, they're being said that they're the most difficult slaves in the whole of the British Caribbean. They had a rough time. When they were first brought here from East Florida, of the 150 that got transported from Rosetown, they're about 20 miles in from St. Augustine's. 49 died on the voyage. There was only 101 of them surviving the voyage. And out of the 101, 8 of them were fit enough to go straight off the boat. Well, they sure took, even if they knew nothing about the Bible, be fruitful and multiply. By the end of slavery, he was the largest. Now, he wasn't the largest all through, but by the end of slavery, he was the largest. And I'm going to tell you why. He had about 400 slaves at the end of slavery from those initial 101. But the Morse brothers of Nassau, who had slaves in Nassau, during slavery, they had about 800, with 600 of them they got permission to export to Guyana. And then you had the Boynton Williams in San Salvador, who exported 200 of his people to Trinidad. And they're in the Chaguaramas district of Trinidad. And how we know that? Because a Baptist minister went down there and he found out that some of the Bahamian families that got transported, that's where they put them and gave them land after slavery. Now, you know, Lord Rowe says, hey, you know, let them have my land for free during the period, even though I'm terminating their contracts ahead of time. Well, his agent in Nassau leaves, who cost the British government about $15 million, said that the ship was not a ship of war during the American Civil War, and the Americans sued after the war when they found the ship down in Brazil. He was crafty from that time. He said, look, you know, even though you're making $70,000 a year on lands in England, you don't have to put in a penny more, you know. Cotton went dead a few years into your taking over from your father, inheriting from your father. And you put in enough money. What we're going to do is make sure that they know whose this is not their land. We're going to charge them all 2 shillings a year in rent. And that 2 shillings a year, in fact, he started national insurance before national insurance was started, will go to maintaining the ones over 60 years of age. Well, I guess after they started paying, they said, what are we paying for this for? You know, basically, the road slaves have more of their master's land than anybody else in Bahamas. About 2,000 acres of it, I'm sorry, 5,000 acres in combination in Exomo. about 76 acres in Holmes Rock, freehold. And even though you're not supposed to sell commonage, you know, a will was found and 600 acres was bought for £900 back in the 1940s. Because it took them 100 years to get to 76 of occupation on the same land. In Holmes Rock, Bahamas, they will celebrate their bicentennial in 2029. So they are only about 20 years away from celebrating their bicentennial on the same land that it was forced to go on in 1829. Well, they went on the land and 6 years later they were free. We're free, we can stay on the land. Especially if we got to pay two shillings rent a year. Now, I told you about the settlements in southern Eleuthera. In the book Land of the Pink World, written by a stipendary magistrate, L.D. Powers, the stipendary magistrate system came back in and he was now a roving magistrate as opposed to a resettlement magistrate. And his observations 50 years later was that the last proprietor of the slave days, Mr. Wims, left his estate to his colored offspring who divided the land and got it properly marked. Each person marked out their share. In Miller's Sound, the proprietor also left land to his people, but never divided it. It's held in commonage in a most, and this is Lord L.D. Powers, magistrate's word, curious fashion. Still around today. Time generation land, although it never legally came about. Yeah, to see how some things during this period may have been. Now, smaller plots of land at lower cost, 20 acres minimum at 12 shillings an acre versus as little as 100 by 100 feet, that is, for 2 shillings an acre, which was how it was set up originally. They found they had to go back to that after the English told them about this 20 acres because it just wasn't good enough. The residence justice practice reverted, and in Grand Bahama, you know, their stipendary justice is in Grand Tail Key, and they kind of reverted to the resident justices who were former slave owners. So wonder why the land in Grand Bahama became so. In 1847, as we said, to 1849, we have the Commutation Act. If you didn't pay your rent, it went back in the court and got sold for the rent. And then in 1896, we have the Commonage Act. Now, the rural states in Zoho had a commonage before commonage was drawn. And we saw that the Millers probably had a commonage situation too. And a lot of places in had commonage, both south and north. And then to try and clear up all of this, in 1959, we find the quieting of Titles Act. Those are the three most important legislation as far as land. And I'm not a lawyer, but I guess some lawyers will probably agree with me on that. And the provision for work in lieu of pay is found actually in the land grants of Adelaide, where they say they have to spend about 2 to 4 days a year in Adelaide. So we got some people got land grants, got them, I have to know that some of the rated Africans got lands, and their expected work as opposed to a peppercorn rent was built into the grant. And then the time must come up generation. Everybody had a feeling on what that is or isn't. I've actually seen freehold land turn almost back right into generation land just because nobody updates the titles or probates the will, or if you're an heir in law, probates the land. That's why I say if you have land,